This flight starts here in the central mountains of Kosovo in August 2024. It is my second attempt at flying this route that I have been wanting to do for a long time. My first try was back in 2023, but because of bad weather, low cloud base and strong winds, I couldn't finish the flight. This time the conditions look promising, and I'm hoping this is gonna be a great flight. Throughout this video, I will share some of the technical side of flying, the decisions I had to make, and the challenges I ran into along the way. Whether you are a paragliding pilot thinking about flying in this region, or just someone who enjoys beautiful mountain views, I think you will enjoy this one. I arrived at the takeoff around 10 a.m. and the sky didn't look too promising. There were no clouds, no signs of thermals, and my motivation dropped a bit. But I decided to wait and see if the day would start to be active later on. I have learned from my past mistakes, rushing to take off early, only to land a few minutes later. So this time I told myself to be patient. And eventually, around 12:30, the thermals started to show up. I got my gear ready, and I took off just around 1 p.m. It was pretty late in the day, so I wasn't really expecting a long flight. And I didn't know how the conditions would turn out to be this time around. But I still wanted to give it my best and see what happens in the air. Before I go deeper into the flight, I want to share something important for any pilot who might be interested to fly in this region. This road follows the Shari mountain range, which runs along the border between Kosovo and North Macedonia. One thing to keep in mind is, if you land in North Macedonia, it might come with legal complications. So that's what you have to consider when you're flying along the border. Also, there is no dedicated air rescue in this country. So if you throw your reserve and get injured in those remote mountains, it could take hours for anyone to reach you. I grew up in this country. Even though I don't live here anymore, I know this area well. So regardless of my flying skills, I never forget what is at stake. So I make sure to take the necessary measures in case something goes wrong. If you ever decide to fly into these deep mountains, make sure someone you know is tracking your live location. And honestly, try not to fly alone, because when you're out there, you're on your own. So now I'm climbing above the takeoff, and I'm surprised by how well the day is working. The thermals are stronger than I expected, and I am able to climb much higher than I could during my last attempt in 2023, where I could only reach about 2,200 meters. This time around, I'm 1,000 meters higher. I ended up spending about 30 minutes flying above the takeoff, trying to get as high as possible to see where the cloud base actually was. And this is when things started shifting in my mind. Originally, I had planned to move through the central mountains to get closer to the ridge before making the crossing. But now, with this much altitude, I started to consider a straight 17-kilometer glide across the valley to reach the Shari mountains. I kept thinking, is this a good idea, or am I about to ruin a very good day with a bad decision? But after going back and forth in my head for a while, I decided to go for it, the straight crossing. With enough height and a light tailwind, the glide across the valley was easy. I was confident I would reach the other side with plenty of altitude. While gliding, memories from my last attempt in 2023 came back. The conditions back then were rough. As I reached the ridge, winds were blowing at 35 kilometers per hour, and mixed with thermals, the air turned very turbulent. I was flying along the border, and the strong winds were pushing me towards North Macedonia. To avoid being blown off course, I had to go full speed bar with big ears, slowly creeping my way back towards the valley. It took me nearly 20 minutes of intense effort, battling collapses, turbulence, and wind before I finally landed safely. That experience was still fresh in my mind, and even though the conditions this time around looked calm and promising, I could feel my body tensing up as I approached the ridge. However, this time everything worked out fine. The wind was calm, there was no overdevelopment, and I climbed straight to the cloud base. I stayed high and I flew towards my first turn point. In front of me you can see Mount Lubeten. It stands at 2,500 meters above sea level. It is an iconic pyramid-shaped peak right on the Kosovo-North Macedonia border. I had hiked this mountain twice before, once on a summer day and another time in tough winter conditions. Back then, I never imagined I would ever be flying. And now, gliding effortlessly over the summit and thinking back on those hikes, it makes me feel really grateful to be up here. From this point on, the plan was simple. Follow the ridge, stay high, and enjoy the views. Along the way, I will be flying over some small glacier lakes and a ski resort where I've skied many times before. I will let the background music play for a couple of minutes through this section so you can enjoy this beautiful scenery. I have reached the end of the ridge now, My plan was to get here and then fly towards the flats. However, now that I'm here, this turns out to be the strongest climb of the day. It takes me up to 3,350 meters. As I'm climbing higher and higher, I keep thinking, which way should I fly now? I have two options: glide across the valley towards the flats and go home, or push deeper into the mountains and explore new areas. I wasn't sure about going deeper into the mountains, because there was a real chance I could land somewhere remote and have to hike down for hours. But having gained this much height, it made me really consider the options. And in the end, I turn away from the safe road and head straight into the mountains. I was aiming to cross above two glacier lakes, hoping to connect with the next ridge and catch a thermal on the other side. But I got distracted by the views and I didn't pay close attention to my glide ratio. As I approached the lakes, I dropped below the ridge line and got flushed into the lee side, about 50 meters too low to make the pass. That's when it hit me. This might turn into a landing. And landing here would mean a 3-hour hike to the nearest road with a 15-kilo backpack. Not exactly what I had in mind. I felt frustrated for making that decision, and I started preparing to land somewhere nearby. But as long as I was still in the air, I figured I might as well push a little further and see how close I can get to a road. Within 10 minutes, I went from the highest to the lowest point on the flight, from having the option to fly further to getting ready to land. That is the paragliding emotional roller coaster. You go from confident to desperate real quick. I barely escaped this low safe and managed to climb a thermal on the west side of the mountain. Thermals were weaker this time, but I needed every bit of height I could get, so I climbed patiently, trying to get as high as possible before going for the long crossing. Seeing that the wind was calm, about 10 kilometers per hour, it made me think about a backup plan. In case I wasn't going to make the crossing, I would try to catch a thermal on the lee side of the mountains. I was about 40 meters short to make the crossing, so I had to climb a bit in the turbulent air until I gained just enough height to fly over the trees and get to the other side. That is when I saw a shepherd with his sheep. I was so close to the ground that his dog started barking at me. From here, I was confident I would reach the flats, and that was good enough for me. My plan wasn't to fly all the way home, so I had no expectations. It was late in the day, around 6 p.m., and there wasn't much lift anymore. I was gliding along the west faces of the mountains, just maintaining altitude, getting ready to land somewhere in the flats. But somehow, right at the edge of the mountains, I caught one last thermal, which took me up to 2,300 meters. And once I got that high, I knew I could fly home. This final part of the flight, the last glide, with the air so calm and stable, it was just peaceful. I had plenty of time to reflect on the whole journey. I kept thinking about how much I had wanted to complete this flight, and to finally do it and end it like this, gliding all the way back home, It felt unreal. Just pure joy and gratitude.